Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen nabiyyina Muhammadi wa ala alihi wa ajma'in. Amma ba'du, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to our next episode of Ayyuh Walad. We are on the fourth counsel, and no messing around today, no introductions, no summaries, no nothing. We're going to jump straight into it because it's quite a long piece of advice. So let's go straight for it, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ayyuh Walad. لا تكن من الأعمال مفلسا ولا من الأحوال خاليا. Now, oh disciple, as we can translate it, oh youngster, لا تكن من الأعمال مفلس. Muflis means somebody who has nothing, yani he's bankrupt, yani he's absolutely nothing to his name. Okay, so لا تكن من الأعمال مفلس, don't be bankrupt or don't be completely void of any actions at all. ولا من الأحوال خاليا, no be empty of أحوال. أحوال means spiritual states. So for example, in spirituality, in spirituality, you have ahwal, states. So your ahwal can change, but your maqam is usually where you are. So your maqam steadily goes up and your maqam steadily goes down, or your maqam stays stationary, and your ahwal can change. Okay, your ahwal can change. So wala min al ahwali khaliyan wa tayaqqan an al ilm al mujarrada la ya'khudhu bil yad. But know this with certainty. Okay, know this with certainty. Be absolutely sure that knowledge on its own cannot help you. Knowledge on its own cannot help you. مثاله لو كان على رجل في برية عشرة أسياف هندية مع أسلحة أخرى. Imagine a scenario. Imagine that a man is in the Bariya, yani Bariya is in the desert, okay? And he has, whilst he's in the desert, meaning he has access to nothing else except Ashratu Asyafin Hindiya. He has access to 10 Indian swords, Ma Aslihatin Ukhra, with the other weapons as well. وَكَانَ رَجُلُ شُجَاعًا وَأَهْلَ حَرْبٍ. And this person himself is very brave and he is a fighter, he's a warrior. فَحَمَلَ عَلَيْهِ أَسَدٌ عَزِيمٌ مَحِيبٌ. At that particular moment in time, a huge, enormous, frightening lion appears. So the scenario is giving, the point Imam Ghazali is making is that knowledge alone is not going to get you success. Knowledge alone is not going to get you through the doors of Jannah. Knowledge alone, it requires a'mal. That's the point he's making. In order to exemplify that, in order to give an appearance in our minds, he says, imagine a chap in the middle of a desert, doesn't have access to anything else. He's a brave man, he's a strong man, and he's a warrior. He knows how to use a sword. He has at his disposal 10 Indian swords, not sure why it had to be Indian, and he also has other weapons as well. As he's sat there, this huge beast of a lion appears. Okay, so imagine that scenario in your mind. Fama zannuk? Yeah, Fama zannuk? What do you think? What's your opinion? هل تدفع الأسلحة شره عنه بلا استعمالها والضرب بها? Is it possible for him, okay, is it possible for him to remove this harm from himself, okay, without using these weapons, without taking these arms? ومن المعلوم أنها لا تدفع إلا بالتحريك والضرب. It's obvious, it is clear to see that the only way he's going to defend himself is if he takes some action and he tries to strike these lion with these weapons. So what's he saying? Imam Ghazali is saying is that if you are trained in the arts and you have the weapons at your disposal, but you do not use those weapons when the lion attacks you, then what use are those weapons? Similarly, if you have ilm and you don't use your ilm, then what use is your ilm? So ilm itself, the knowledge of doing something, is not useful in survival or in achieving the objective of this life. That's the point that's being made here. Now, I don't want to dwell on it too long because, as I mentioned to you, it's quite a long nasiha, so we want to, get to the end of it, inshallah. فكذا لو قرأ رجل 100,000 مسألة علمية وتعلمها. Similarly, taking this point further, similarly, if a man reads 100,000 مسألة, he reads 100,000 مسألة, مسائل, يعني matters, issues, علمية, يعني of a religious nature, وتعلمها, and he studies them so that he understands them, ولم يعمل بها, but he does not act upon them, لا تفيده إلا بالعمل, then it will not benefit him, okay, except if he takes action. What use is it? ومثله أيضا لو كان لرجل حرارة ومرض صفراوي. Again, to exemplify this, he puts forward a scenario. Its similitude or its example is also if there was a man who is suffering from harara, fever, ومرض صفراوي, and jaundice. This is a yellow illness, which is jaundice. يكون علاجه, its ilaj, its cure, its treatment is بالسكنجبين. بالسكنجبين. Sakanjabin is when you mix honey and vinegar together. Okay, this was a kind of a traditional method of cure, and there's a name, I think it's oxymel is the fancy name for it. Well, kashkab is barley, so they would mix this together and they would give this to a person who's suffering from fever or suffering from jaundice. فلا يحصل البرء إلا باستعمالهما. Even if he has that there, even if he has the honey and vinegar mixture there, and he has the barley there right in front of him, but he does not use them, then what chance has he got of recovering? So the ill person knowing what medicine he needs, but not taking it. The warrior knowing what weapons he needs to defend himself against the lion, but doesn't use them, is exactly like the person who learns but does not apply them by taking action. He then quotes a Persian couplet, which I will try my best, probably break the legs of this, but hopefully there's no Persian expert listening to this. Garmi do hazar ratal hami BMAIS, tami nahuri nabashudat shidai. That's as close as I'm going to get to it. Thankfully, we can do the English, which is something along the lines of that if you were to pour for yourself 2,000 cups of wine, okay, unless you drink it, then you will not get drunk. Not that I'm condoning drinking alcohol, but it's a couplet that Imam Ghazali uses, so let's use it as well. What he's saying here again is that you can't expect to get drunk if you pour out the glasses, but then don't drink the wine. So he's emphasizing this point again and again and again. Here he goes again. وَلَوْ قَرَأْتَ الْإِلْمَ 100 سَنَةٍ وَجَمَعْتَ أَلْفَ كِتَابٍ. If you were to read knowledge, study knowledge for 100 years, وَجَمَعْتَ أَلْفَ كِتَابٍ, and you collected 1,000 books, because back in the day, there was no mass producing. So to get a book, either you would sit with the author and write the book yourself, whilst the author would dictate it from his book, or you would read his book and then you would write yours afterwards, or you would be given a book as hadiyah, or you would possibly purchase a book that was handwritten, which would be expensive. So books were not mass produced. So gathering 1,000 books is nowadays gathering 1,000 books, as long as you've got money, it's not an issue. But back in the day, if you gathered 1,000 books, that was remarkable, because first of all, you would have to travel from city to city. There was no put this in the post for me. You'd have to travel to all the religious centers across Iraq and across Khorasan and across the Caucasus and across the Haramain and into Sham. You'd have to travel and Northern Africa and gather that from the centers of learning. And then to carry them back home, and then keep doing that to get 1,000 books. But he's saying, even if you were to study knowledge for 100 years, which most people aren't going to get that opportunity, and you were to gather 1,000 books, لا تكون مستعد لرحمة الله تعالى إلا بالعمل. you would not be reliant upon, or you should not expect the mercy of Allah except by doing acts. Okay, except by doing acts. And then he quotes a verse, وَأَنَّ لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. And man does not receive, in terms of reward or result, except what he strives for. فَمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو لِقَاءَ رَبِّهِ فَلْيَعْمَلْ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا. That person who hopes to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or meet his Rabb favorably, فَلْيَعْمَلْ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا, he should do good deeds. جَزَاءً بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. This is a recompense, a reward for what they did. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ كَانَتْ لَهُمْ جَنَّاتُ الْفِرْدَوْسِ نُزُلًا خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا لَا يَبْغُونَ عَنْهَا حِوَلًا. Indeed, as for those people who believed and وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ and did good deeds, كَانَتْ لَهُمْ, for them there will be جَنَّاتُ الْفِرْدَوْسِ, gardens of Firdaus. Firdaus is the highest form of Jannah. Nuzulan, as a form of relaxing, as a form of respite, as a place to stay. Khalidina fiha, they will stay in there for eternity. La yabghuna anha hiwala, and there will be no change, meaning there will be no tahwil. It will, it will stay like that. Nobody, whenever we go to a place where we're on a holiday, for example, after a few days, or we either get homesick or we get used to all the things that place has to offer and we start to get bored. That's not possible in Jannat al-Firdaus. فَخَلَفَ مِنْ بَعْدِهِمْ خَلْفٌ أَضَاءُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَاتَّبَعُوا الشَّهَوَاتِ فَسَوْفَ يَلْقَوْنَ غَيًّا إِلَّا مَنْ تَابَ وَآمَنَ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا فَأُولَٰئِكَ يَدْخُلُونَ الْجَنَّةَ وَلَا يُظْلَمُونَ شَيْئًا. So then, فَخَلَفَ مِنْ بَعْدِهِمْ, after them, khalfun, descendants came, ada'us salata, who wasted their salah, who neglected their salah, wattaba'us shahawat, and instead they followed their desires and their passions and their whims. فَسَوْفَ يَلْقَوْنَ غَيًّا, soon they will meet or they will be in such a state, إِلَّا مَنْ تَابَ, except for that person who repents, وَآمَنَ, and he believes. And the key bit, which Imam Ghazali is trying to make this point repeatedly, وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا, and he does good deeds. فَأُولَٰئِكَ يَدْخُلُونَ الْجَنَّةَ وَلَا يُظْلَمُونَ شَيْئًا. They are those people those people who repent from their sins, who believe and who do good deeds. فَأُولَٰئِكَ يَدْخُلُونَ الْجَنَّةَ, they are those people who will enter Jannah. وَلَا يُظْلَمُونَ شَيْئًا, and they will not be oppressed in any way, shape or form. وَمَا تَقُولُ فِي هَذَا الْحَدِيثِ. And okay, if my point hasn't gone through, if you feel that, I'm speaking on behalf of Imam Ghazali, if you feel that the ayats I've quoted to you can be interpreted in different ways, then fine. What do you say regarding this hadith? Buni al-Islamu ala khams. Islam has been built upon 5 foundations. Shahadati an la ilaha illallah, to bear testimony that there is none worthy of worship except Allah, wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, and that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his messenger, wa iqam as-salah, and to establish salah, wa ita az-zakah, and to give zakah, wa sawmi Ramadan, and to fast the month of Ramadan, wa hajj al-bayt liman istata'a ilayhi sabila, and to make pilgrimage to the house, yani hajj, for that person who is capable and able to find a route to it. Well, iman qawlan, so let's look at this, let's unpack this, he's saying. So what is iman? Iman is qawlun bil lisan, it's what you say with the tongue. Yani, when you say I believe, when somebody's taking a shahada, when a person wants to become a Muslim, what do they have to do? They have to take the shahada. They have to say ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. I bear witness that there is none worthy of worship except Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his messenger. He has to make a verbal statement. He has to make a witness statement. That's the witness statement he gives. But also tasdiqun bil janan, he has to believe it. Because the munafiqun would say that. Aliyadu billah. They would say that. They would say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu an. That did not make them Muslims. In fact, they were called munafiq, which is the worst form of a non-Muslim. So why is it that they were called munafiq? Because they did not believe in their hearts. So it's not just what you say on the tongue. There has to also be what tasdeequn bil janan. There has to be affirmation in the heart. The heart has to agree with the tongue. A munafiq is somebody whose heart does not agree with his tongue. And a mu'min, a believer, is one whose heart agrees with his tongue. So it's not just a statement, it is belief in the heart. And then there's a third element, Imam Ghazali says, and that is wa'amalun bil arkan. The actions, you know, the famous saying isn't it? Actions speak louder than words. The actions then ratify this person's belief. The actions ratify this person's belief. A person says he believes in Allah, then does not pray salah. A person says he believes in Allah and does not give zakah. A person says he believes in Allah and then he does not fast. A person says he believes in Allah and then he does not perform Hajj. A person says he believes in Allah and then he denies the rulings from the verses of the Quran. A person believes in Allah and then he considers that he can shave the beard, or the sister does not have to practice hijab. So how can a person say that with their tongue, believe it in their heart, and then their actions do not ratify it? So Imam Ghazali is saying is that Iman is of three levels: the statement with the tongue, the affirmation in the heart, and then the ratification of the actions. وَدَلِيلُ الْأَعْمَالِ أَكْثَرُ مِنْ أَنْ يُحْصَى. And the evidence for actions being a constituent of Iman is more than you can count. وَإِنْ كَانَ الْعَبْدُ يَبْلُغُ الْجَنَّةَ بِفَضْلِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى وَكَرَمِهِ. Even though he accepts this, he says, even though this worshipper, al-abd, يَبْلُغُ الْجَنَّةَ, will reach Jannah بِفَضْلِ اللَّهِ, due to the bounty of Allah. Wa karamihi, and his grace. Yani nobody is going to enter Jannah by their actions. Nobody is going to enter Jannah by their actions. He accepts that it is only by the bounty of Allah, it is only by the grace of Allah that a person is going to be entered into Jannah. Lakin, however, okay, he adds this. Lakin ba'da an yasta'idda bi ta'atihi wa ibadatihi. This is after. Okay, this is consequential. Ba'd, yani to him being predisposed, yani yasta'idda, to his adat, to bita'atihi, in his obedience, yani Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, wa ibadati, and his worship. Li'anna, because the statement says, Rahmatullahi qareebun min al-muhsinin. Rahmatullahi qareebun min al-muhsinin. The mercy of Allah is closer to those who muhsinin, do good. Muhsinin is somebody who does hasan. Ahsana yuhsinu muhsin. Yani somebody who does good. Not somebody who says good. Not somebody who believes good. But somebody who does good. If we accept, as he's building this argument, that we only enter into Jannah due to the mercy of Allah, that's the only way we get into Jannah, not because of our Iman, not because of our actions, due to the mercy of Allah, we enter into Jannah. Obviously, Allah's already stipulated that we have to be believers, but it's through the mercy of Allah that we enter Jannah. How do we get the mercy? He mentions this. He says, Rahmatullahi qareebun min al-muhsinin. The mercy of Allah is closer to those people who do good, and by then leading that on, meaning the muhsin are the ones who receive the mercy of Allah, and as a consequence will enter Jannah. وَلَوْ قِيلَ أيضا, if however it is argued, if somebody posits and argues the case, يَبْلُغُ بِمُجَرِّدِ الْإِيمَانِ, that a person will reach Jannah solely by the person's Iman, like I just mentioned literally seconds earlier, that a person has to be a believer in order to enter into Jannah, because that's the rule Allah has set. And Allah's not going to change rules willy-nilly. If He set a rule for us, then for us to follow those rules, we need to know the rules, that these are rules. The goalposts cannot be changed halfway through. Once the rule is set, then we know what the rule is. So if it is argued that yablughu bimujarrad al-iman, that a person can reach Jannah solely by their Iman, qulna nam, we will say, okay, fine, yes, we accept that. However, And you knew there was a however coming. However, لكن متى يبلغ? Okay, when will he get there? وكم من عقبة كؤود يقطعها إلى أن يصل. And how many challenging scenarios and difficulties will he have to overcome before he reaches there? فأول تلك العقبات عقبة الإيمان. The first of these challenges and difficulties that he has to overcome is the challenge and the difficulty of Iman. وأنه هل يسلم من سلب الإيمان أم لا? And will he be protected from, will he be safe from, okay, the denial of Iman or not? وإذا وصل هل يكون خائبا مفلسا? And when he arrives, will he be, okay, خائبا يعني unsuccessful, muflis, bankrupt, يعني devoid of any deeds? And he concludes by saying, وَكَانَ الْحَسَنَ الْبَصْرِ, and Imam al-Hasan al-Basri rahmatullah alayhi yaqul says, Allah ta'ala li'ibadihi yawm al-qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says on the day of judgment to his servants, udkhulu ya ibadi, enter, O my slaves, al-jannata bi rahmati, enter into Jannah, okay, by my mercy, which is making the point. Udkhulu ya ibadi al-jannata bi rahmati waqtasimuha bi a'malikum. Waqtasimuha bi a'malikum. And then divide yourselves up or rank yourselves based on your a'mal. And that brings us to the conclusion, which is that we enter Jannah due to the mercy of Allah. The mercy of Allah comes due to our good actions, like we pointed out earlier. And then when we enter Jannah, we end up in our final place of dwelling based on our actions. So we can clearly see from there, we've just gone a couple of minutes over, it's quite a long nasiha. We can clearly see from there Imam Ghazali's argument that actions are absolutely essential for success. Join me tomorrow, same time, inshallah, about 7:45 for Ayyuh al-Walad, which will be our 6th one, I think. Today was fifth counsel, because the first one was introduction, and we had a fiqh our Wednesday, inshallah. And we'll also announce tomorrow about slight change in times as well. As you can see, we push it a little bit later. Till tomorrow. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.